Whipped up if I sent my wife's sex to the guy she was cheating with's wife. So I discovered that my wife has been unfaithful to me. She does not consider it cheating since she did not have sex with him. She's simply been sending graphic texts and photos about what they want to do to one another. In my opinion, this is cheating. I eventually found out by looking through her phone. She had been behaving suspiciously and attempting to conceal things, and her version about things had changed. I never saw myself as the insane spouse that looks through their phone, yet here we are. However, the reason I'm writing is to see whether I should give a copy of the messages to this guy's wife. I believe she has a right to know. Even if I'm sick to my stomach right now, it's better than not knowing. My wife said that this is a private matter between us, and I would be a jerk if I damaged their marriage as well. I'm not here to tell you that my wife stinks, I already knew that. But what do I really want to know? Would I be considered if I sent the texts? I'm rather certain I'll do it. Edit. I've mentioned this in a few comments, but I thought I'd add it here as well. I don't have any images of anybody. Thankfully, the photos were delivered over Snapchat, so I didn't have to view them. I just have text conversations back and forth between them discussing what they would do if they were together in person and such. So, if I sent anything, it would be a message, and I would most likely choose one of the less graphic and horrible ones. Just enough to get the gist of what's going on. Edit 2. Updated. I discovered the messages between them a week ago. I've now calmed down and am now in a gloomy depression rather than the seething anger I was in before. But I've determined that I'm not going to contact the other man's wife. Some of you suggested I'd be the if I did it for selfish reasons, while others said I'd be the if I didn't do it because she deserved to know. My explanation is because I don't want to worry about it any longer and am trying to move on. If it makes me self-centered, so be it. Story 2. I still feel jealous of his being happily partnered now. My ex, 31 male, and I 33 female, at college, when he was 20 and I was 22. We began dating shortly after meeting in class and were attached at the hip from then on. We did everything together, and he was my greatest friend and most dependable supporter. We got along well and people were constantly astonished that we could study, work, eventually acquired positions at the same company, and yet spend time together afterwards. He was more prone to jealousy and would occasionally act erratically when I was doing my own thing, a habit I tried to maintain, since we did so much together. But aside from one major fight, I said hi to a cute guy as we passed by a party's bathroom. He saw and drunkenly called me a. We were pretty solid. We were planning moving in together and getting married after 5 years, when a friend tentatively informed me she spotted him on Tinder. When I confronted him about it, he told me that he was intrigued and that he hadn't spoken to anybody about it and that he would erase it. I realized he still had the app but had relocated it out of sight a few weeks later. He claimed to have forgotten. I was naive and blindly trusted the guy. So when he abruptly deserted me in bed months later, claiming his grandma was having a stroke and that I not come with him, and that he'd be back by morning, I was actually concerned. Morning came and went, and he was still not responding to messages or answering phone calls. In the afternoon, fearing that he drove himself into a ditch on his way to the hospital, I contacted his mother, who assured me that both grandparents were well. She said she phoned him, and he called back almost immediately with some nonsense about passing out in the hospital's waiting area and oversleeping. My initial impression was that he was probably high and too afraid to tell me, so I just requested that he wait until he was comfortable with whatever he was doing and not treat me like an idiot. We had planned to attend to a location later that day where some of our friends were performing. He brought me there as if nothing had happened, grabbed us some food, chit-chatted until our friends came, then drew me aside and told me he was breaking up with me for no reason and whether I wanted his ring back or if he should throw it away. I was furious that he wouldn't even admit it. And after almost 6 years of being in a committed relationship, this guy who had joked about our wedding colors the week before suddenly stonewalled me and behaved as if I were nuts. A few weeks later, after much crying, he eventually acknowledged to the affair and justified it by saying, "She was simply so out of my league. I never believed a gorgeous lady like her would desire me, so I had to go for it." This shattered my self-esteem. I became obsessed with working out and developed an eating disorder. The affair was brief, but he quickly moved on to another woman, with whom he is presently in a relationship. While I no longer desire him, I hate that they have the life I wished for when dating wasn't going so well, despite the fact that I've been working so hard on myself. These last 2 years have been exceptionally difficult, and I can't help but worry whether I'm defective in some way. Story 3. IDK What's up with me? I 20 male. Thought I was straight but made out with my friend 20 male about a month ago and can't stop thinking about it. A month ago, a group of friends and I rented a cottage for a weekend of fun, mostly partying. A buddy asked several local females to join us one of the evenings. As a consequence, he got fortunate and kicked another buddy out of the room they were meant to share, twin beds. He was planning on sleeping on the crummy sofa, but I told him he could simply bunk with me since I had a large bed all to myself. We drank a couple beers and I was buzzed a bit intoxicated by the time we went to bed. We began chatting about other topics and ultimately got around to his being homosexual and how grateful he is that I treat him the same as everyone else. Of course I do, he's just like everyone else, I said him as I walked in to give him a hug. The embrace evolved into some light hugging as we spoke, and ultimately we kissed, which led to some intense making out for a bit. I'm not going to lie, I had a great time and would have continued, but I had to go to the restroom, and when I returned he was fast asleep. So I simply climbed into bed and fell asleep. When I awoke, we were hugging, but I wanted coffee, so I sneaked out of bed to fetch it. Other friends drew me away, and I didn't see him again for a while. When I did, I apologized for not being there, and he claimed it wasn't a huge issue, then stated how last night was insane since he was really intoxicated and didn't remember anything from the night before. He had less to drink than I did, so I suspect he doesn't remember it, but I'm not sure whether he does or if he simply wants to forget it. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it or him since then. I've never loved a person or considered the physical things I'm now considering with him, but I simply can't stop. I believe I like him, but I'm not sure what it means for me or who I am, much alone what to do about it. Any advice? Update 1. I ended up sending my buddy a link to the writings on this site because I believed it would be the most effective method to communicate what I was thinking and feeling. We had a lengthy conversation about it all, and he admitted that he did recall, but that he was letting me off the hook. He informed me that he likes me, but he was scared to tell me since I'm uncertain about my sexuality, or in other words, have no clue what it is. His greatest fear was and continues to be being driven into the closet as a nasty secret, which I completely understand. It was my reaction to him that I was terrified at the prospect of informing others, such as my parents, but I also didn't want to keep him hidden since the concept of doing so seemed terrible to me. He promised to exercise some patience, and I committed to try my best to gradually be honest and open if and when we do end up in a relationship, as well as when we first began dating. We ended up going on a first date to see a movie that night, which was a little nerve-wracking. It took me a little while to warm up to the idea of holding his hand during the movie. I was apprehensive about holding it outside the theater, where everyone would be able to see me. We decided to get some pizza after the show, which is only a few blocks away from the theater. It's a tiny town, and we happened to run into a buddy. I choked up, rambled, and even tried to keep what we were doing a secret at first, but I eventually confessed that we were on our first date. Despite the fact that I am still suffering and stressed about my lack of knowledge about public PDAs, and about informing people, I genuinely enjoy him.